Hello, welcome to a little conversation about the Gathering of Tribes between me, Victor Vorsky, the co-founder, and
Me, Audrey, the now second co-founder and implementer, I guess, supporting Victor as the source of this project. We're gonna have a little dialogue talking about what makes up the DNA of the gathering, what are really the key elements that are foundational to what we're doing and to the design of this event. And Victor, I guess we can start with you, and perhaps you can tell us a bit more about why reinventing gatherings and where did this idea come from?
thank you. So, yeah, it's it came from my instinctual need and frustration. On the one hand, I really love outdoor festivals. And I've spent 30 years going to music and other festivals. At the same time, I'm getting older, and whilst I love going to a good dance music festival once in a while, it's not satisfying enough. And then on the other hand, there is conferences, summits and things like this. But I felt frustrated for years with the format of sitting and being talked at, of some kind of a stiff top-down program thing, which didn't really reflect the needs of the people in the room. So that was my kind of gut drive. At the same time, now, as I've spent more and more time talking about the gathering to people and thinking through it and why and what does it mean and why do humans gather, I've come to this idea. We like to talk about indigenous or traditional technologies. And I think the gathering is one of the most fundamental human technologies. And I've come to the realization that actually the way we gather, the gatherings are much more profound than just a little bit of entertainment, getaway, or learning, or even making some connections and meeting people. These are crucibles of culture. This is a microcosm where we can practice whatever culture we dream of, right? And you see this through religions or traditional cultures that always have strong festivals and other gatherings, and they're a very important piece of culture making for every culture. So actually, I think in the modern world, by reducing festivals, gatherings to either entertainment or information download or commerce, we've lost the key element of the power. We're not making full use of this power of building a culture. And since in the regenerative world, we're talking about building a new culture, building a new world, I think it's very important to think of how we gather and gather in a way which reflects the way we would like our world to be. What do you think, Audrey?
Yeah, that's a very good summary, I guess. And just to add, the culture piece is really, I think, central to how we feel and how we work on the gathering. And it's quite a challenging one. I think we both abide by this idea that culture can't really be built. It's something that's really emergent. And so the way we approach this piece is really through the idea that we're sowing the seeds, right, of the culture that we want to see, which is a culture based on collaboration. And so it's really asking ourselves this question of within the space of this event, what are the elements that we do have control over, right? What are those constraints and those boundaries that we can place on the map for this culture to emerge, to encourage that culture of collaboration? And then whatever happens within the space is actually still fairly open and very much of a live collective level experiment. We don't really know what's going to happen at the gathering, and that's a big part of the excitement. We do know more or less what general shape we would love for it to take. Do you want to talk a little bit more maybe about the nature parts of the
So
design?
yeah, I think that's the why of why we're inventing. And let's talk a bit about how we see ourselves reinventing gatherings for the regenerative era, because this is how I've come to think of it. So the first part is the nature part. the gathering, as those who have been following us know, is happening in nature, and there is an instinctual felt feel. We all know we feel somehow different being in nature and biodiverse nature than we are in a busy city. We have a lot of research now on biophilia, which is the science of how humans connect with nature. And this shows us that we're calmer, we're more creative. But I think there is also something else in a key part of the regenerative movement, not the only one, but a key part is rethinking and reinventing our relationship with nature, biosphere. Yes, we are part of nature, but the parts of nature which are not human. And there is something limiting about trying to do this in a conference room in the middle of a big city. So I think coming out and being under a tree, in nature, in the environment, yes, sometimes subject to the weather, I think it makes it more genuine and easier to connect. It really brings in the natural environment as a first player in our gathering. And of course, there is, because we're really placing the emphasis on connection, on meeting people. A natural environment is great because you can always go for a walk and talk when you meet somebody. There is everywhere you can sit down, you can have an impromptu circle or conversation. Natural outdoor space is much more flexible than structured straight walls, conference rooms, or such. So that's for me. How about you, Audrey?
Yeah, all of this, and I think the fact that there is in the space of nature this idea for me of nothing for us without us, which is usually used in the context of youth participation, but I think we can very much apply to this element. We're talking about nature here, humans as a part of nature, right? That a lot of conversations are really circling around climate change and the poly crisis and so on. And so for us to have this conversation without nature surrounding us and without nature being symbolically at the table, just wouldn't really feel right. So this is for me a huge element of it. And in the fact that we're choosing this space in nature, there is also for me this idea that the event will be more integrative somehow. That by being in nature, by sleeping there together, by cooking food together, as you were saying, by walking around the land as a micro community, it's much harder to separate between our professional selves and our personal selves, and it's much harder to keep up with the mirrors and the masks, and so it forces us to be more human. And in the humanity, I think there is a completely level of dialogue that can take shape, and that can sort of sink within the society. So quite excited to see where that takes us and to see how many professional partnerships are formed in the community kitchens.
Beautiful. Thank you. So there's another aspect that we're reinventing or that we're doing somewhat different in the gathering. And this is actually one which for some people is challenging. We're really trying to bring people widely across many different change maker movements, many silos. Maybe you can speak a bit to that, Audrey. Why is that important?
I can, because I've had many conversations about this, and I find it absolutely fascinating. I think we're really used in those days to take part in focus groups and in communities of practice, and basically in expert groups mostly, which I think is great and is very valuable, but it's also something that can reinforce this feeling that we're working in silos, that there is fragmentation, that there is no link anymore and no bridges between the experts and the wider public, and also in between expert groups. And so the gathering is really taking this approach of bringing everyone together. And if that means having political activist groups co-creating a camp right next to government organizations or international institutions or larger corporates, that's exactly the point. So it's about creating a space that is safe for all of us to be in dialogue together. And we're approaching it in a two-dimensional way. And by two-dimensional, I mean both at the level of what we call the spheres, which you could say are the sectors of regeneration, from arts to finance, all the way to ecosystem restoration and everything in between. But also in terms of the types of organizations, right? From non-incorporated groups of humans who are doing something together to, again, larger organizations made up of hundreds of people and a couple millions of funding every year. And what is interesting is to understand how this crossover between all those dimensions can actually support innovation, support more collaboration, and how ideas and solutions and key questions can be transferred from those spaces and just bring this different perspective that is sometimes the one thing that is needed to go further in our reasoning and to just find that one thing that we couldn't quite put our fingers on. Yeah, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, all of those things that we said, and put it simply, to me, it's clear that the new world that we dream of is going to be, needs to be much more interconnected, and we can't build it in silos. Also, what I think is worth mentioning, that with the gathering, we're not just looking and inviting the people who call themselves regenerative something. It's about everybody that's rethinking society and how we are on this on earth. There are movements such as, for example, the one to reinvent the learning system, self-directing and such, which have been going for 50, even 100 years, and don't call themselves regenerative something, or at least not yet, but are part of changing the world. There is circular economy. There is many different movements that are older than regeneration or parallel to it, but are trying to rethink how we are together, how we are in relation to each other, how we are in relation to the earth, to make this work better for all. And we are inviting and bringing all of them together. So super excited about that.
Thank you so much. You want to talk a little bit more about probably one of the most important pillars, this co-creation element. I guess I'm still receiving these days the question, are you looking for speakers for the event a lot on social media? And yeah, I guess this is a nice segue for you to explain a bit more. What is this co-creation about and how are we actually implementing it?
Yeah, so we are looking for speakers. Everybody who comes is invited to be a speaker and a workshop giver, as well as a participant. For me, I think, and it's always dangerous to bring in Burning Man as an inspiration, because we're not pulling in all of the Burning Man zeitgeist, and especially not how it's developed lately, but the no spectators idea. I think this idea that we're all here and everybody's responsible for the experience, which doesn't mean that you have to put on a talk, but it means that the way you respond to a person that comes up and talks to you is part of creating the experience of the overall event. So we are, no matter what, everybody is co-creating it. And for me, I think the key thing is, and it goes back to the culture creation, right? If we think of the gathering as a crucible of the kind of society that we dream of, and none of us will live long enough to see a global scale, fully regenerative, beautiful, no war, peace, etc. society. It's just not going to happen within our lifetimes. But for these 5 days, we can live the culture that we dream of. And for me, the culture that I dream of, the way I see this regenerative society, is one of bottom-up, horizontal, peer-to-peer collaboration, of neighbors helping each other, of communities helping each other, of businesses, organizations collaborating with each other, not one that's top-down designed, through some kind of top-down hierarchy. So if we do believe, if you do believe that the future needs to be more bottom-up, collaborative, horizontal, peer-to-peer, then an event which is top-down programmed just does not make sense, right? Where are we going to learn these skills of horizontal collaboration if not at events? It's absolutely crucial. Then there is, separately from that, there is a very practical reason that the world of regeneration is super complex. There's so many things going on. There's nobody that's so smart that they can program what's needed for themselves better than all of us sensing and thinking together could do it. Moreover, even if you do come up with your ideal world, ideal program, what happens is as people meet, as they gather, people sense, we're too much in the head. Maybe we just need to all go for a walk or dance, right? And a co-created, and it's not just pre-co-created, it's a real-time co-created, enables people to offer what they sense in the moment they need and others need. And that just creates a so much richer tapestry than any, even the most genius top-down central programming team ever could. Would you like to add anything to that, Audrey?
Yeah, I love this idea that you bring in at the end. For me, it has something to do with the magic of the ecosystem. I mean, people talking about the fears of regeneration tend to bring in the example of ants, right? But for me, there is so much beauty in this, understanding all the functions that are needed within the ecosystem and watching the ecosystem organically adapt as it needs to take the shape that it needs to in that moment to answer what is alive, right? So as you're saying, and we're seeing it already with the camps that are coming alive and being created, some camps are holding space for just being. Some camps are putting up a whole program with very specific activities because they're really in the doing. Some camps are holding that more theoretical principle development framework. And all of this is very naturally taking the shape or mirroring, I guess, the ecosystem as it is. So yeah, very curious to see how this really happens and comes alive before the gathering and the preparation, but also how, as you were saying, it continuously adapts in a very dynamic way during the 5 days of the event as well.
Yeah. Super excited. And that's where this idea of, as we are organizers, but we don't know exactly what will happen. And actually, I really look forward to the surprises of the things. And already this happened during the first event, surprises of all the kinds of things that emerge. So this is all wonderful. We're in nature, we are co-creating, we're diverse. But what's the bottom line of it all? How does this actually impact and make things happen in the world, Audrey?
That's the very big question. I don't know if I can fully answer it, but our ambition for sure is really focused around this connect for action, which we've chosen as our mantra for this year's edition, and is really linked to this idea of creating a culture based on collaboration. So yes, sure, this is networking. This is about being together. This is about meeting over individuals and projects. But in the being together, there is this idea that the being will lead us to the doing. And there is very much this, I guess, assumption that increased collaboration will really emerge from that space. So how can we, by being together in person, how can we reduce silos? How can we reduce fragmentation? This is something that we've really observed, especially by speaking to so many people over the past 6 to 9 months. Everyone is doing amazing things in all the spheres of regeneration. There's fantastic projects being born almost every day. And there is still a lot of, again, fragmentation, right? It's quite hard for people to coordinate and to collaborate. And this we know from human history. Coordination is just can take a lot of energy. And so for us, there is this idea of how can we create small action at whatever level is needed through, again, through this event, through opening this space of being together. Yeah, there's a lot more to say. Do you want to add to that?
Thank you. Yeah, and I think what I wanted to add to that is this idea of the app, which is still in development, but my background is in software development, and I'm super excited. And of course, we have all seen apps designed to take us out of the real, suck us into the digital world, and given the whole world of apps a bad reputation of being devices for addiction and separation. But I think that's a design choice of those apps. I think we can make a design choice, and I'm really looking forward to experimenting and building an app which supports this connection for action. It's so easy. You meet somebody, you get their WhatsApp or Instagram or whatever, but then do you remember? Do you remember days, weeks, months after what you were supposed to do on how? Yeah. So we're building an app which supports this idea of Connect for Action, which will enable peer support from your tribe, from your camp. So I'm really excited about exploring that. This year it will be simple, but over time I see it growing. And I think creating an app which really supports the in real life experience and which is not designed to suck us in, but to enhance our in real life experience also has a huge potential. And I think this will, with time, become a key differentiator and power of the gathering. And
Amazing.
yeah, I think that's it.
Any last words?
Come September 11th to 15th. Looking forward to seeing you in person in Portugal.
Thank you.